Can you hear me all right out there? No, can't hear me out there. All right, let's try this. I'm right here. Okay, very good. Good morning, I'm Chris Schreiner. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm so glad to see you all here this morning. Hi there. I want to thank those who helped participate in this service and prepare for the service. Chris Cook, the worship associate. Steve Walcave on tech as a worship host. Kathy Walcave over at the welcome table. Jay Steele as board rep. And our musicians, Joanne Schreiner and Nudie Van Hoven. Paul Davis will also help with joys and concerns. We ring this bell 3 times. The first is to call us into a covenant that is long overdue. We are on land stolen from the Moekma tribe of the Ohlone people. Everything we do to restore their rights, equality, and sovereignty is working our way toward establishing a true covenant. The second bell calls us into relationship with ourselves and one another, to recognize broken promises, unhealed hurts, lingering scars, where being right was more important than being whole. We intentionally gather to invite an ever-widening circle of compassion, commitment, and solidarity till we're all beloved of one another. And the third bell calls us into relationship with our children and our children's children out to the 7th generation and beyond, helping us to remember that what we do now or fail to do will be felt by those who come after us.
Today's service is going to focus on ignorance, especially how it relates to politics. In keeping with that theme, I'd like to talk about democracy. I guess that many of us in this congregation consider ourselves to be patriots. What that means will vary from person to person. Some, for example, may feel a component of being patriotic is supporting our armed services, or the people who have served or are serving in our armed forces. Others not so much. So definitions may vary. Many of us self-labeled as patriots or not, if asked, would without hesitation say our American system of democracy is the best in the world. I believe that even if that is true, there's a great deal of room for improvement. And there is a way forward to avoid situations like the mess we are currently mired in. 2 states, Alaska and Maine, currently use ranked choice voting for their presidential elections. Ranked choice voting is very different, and I believe very superior, to our current dominant system of winner take all, where you only get to vote for one person. I'm not going, hang on a minute. And unfortunately, this has led to a disheartening situation where more than 1/3 of our presidents have been elected with less than half the popular vote. And I'm not going to explain today how ranked choice voting works or how it would break the dominant stranglehold that the 2-party system has on politics in America. I'll let you do your own reading and your own research and decide if it is a tool we should all pick up to help remake our crumbling American democracy. And now let us all join in covenant to embrace knowledge and fellowship as a community. The foundation of Mission Peak is love. We are a spiritual community of open minds, nurturing growth and healing in ourselves and all people. Together, we strive to live compassionately and courageously as we work for a nonviolent, just, and sustainable world.
Good morning, Mission Peak. It is nice to see all of you, and all of you up there. Welcome to Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Jay Steele. My pronouns are he and his, and I'm honored to be a member of the board, your president for this year. Thank you. We are so glad you joined us this morning. Do we have any visitors today? Any visitors? Nope. I'm going to start out by highlighting some current announcements. You are all invited to join us for John Porter's memorial service at Cole Hall on Saturday, August 16th, right here at 1 p.m. Greg, as you probably know by now, but Greg is on vacation, camping and caring for Lucy's mother until August 10th. If you have any administration questions, contact Sandra Lang, our congregational administrator. If you have any program questions, contact me, our board president. And if you have pastoral questions, ask Reverend Barbara Myers, our minister on call. The 13th, coming up soon, there's a potluck dinner right here, starting at 5:30 to 8. And on the 23rd, there's a family night out. It's going to be make your own chalice activity. Please silence your electronic devices, which I've just done. And also, Sharon, thank you for coming today. We miss Alan and have fond memories of him. I think there will be an event for him coming up, but that needs to be scheduled still. Unitarian Universalism is a radically inclusive, non-doctrinal, non-dogmatic, open-minded, and open-hearted faith. We are people who are coming at truth from different paths. We gather together across different identities, experiences, and beliefs to affirm and promote the inherent worth of every person. Together we see our job is to love the hate out of this world, heal the hurt in ourselves and one another, and be the change we'd like to see in the world. Isn't that great?
Yes.
If you're our guest for the first time, we welcome you. We use chat and Zoom if we have any guests on Zoom. We also have a book near the welcome table to share joys and concerns. We also have social hour after the service where we get to visit one another, either in Zoom breakout rooms or on the patio. The worship host, Steve, will give you more information about this after the service. Kathy from our membership team will put a link to our weekly newsletter and chat so you can see all the events coming up. We encourage you to join anything that speaks to you. And send an email to welcome@mpuc.org to request a newsletter. If you're here in person, as you all are, our welcome table is right over there where you can sign up. Finally, make sure your mobile devices are silenced. We are so glad to be together today. Let's end by asking everyone in Zoomlandia and everyone in Cole Hall to wave to one another and feel the joy of being part of one large, beloved community. Welcome and thank you to our members and friends near and far.
I invite you now to rise as you're able for hymn number 1003, Where Do We Come From? Number 1003.
Around. So first, we're going to be singing it through twice. Everything's twice. And then after that, we'll be asking you to join us, singing it just straight through. And then we break into, after that we break into rounds. And Okay. The three of you are mine, and I expect you to sing louder than everybody else. And yes, all of you can see who you're standing in front of, and that's the person that you follow devotedly. Do our best. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Mystery, mystery, life is a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a mystery. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Nice.
Great.
Give yourselves a pat on the back, or you can reach forward and pat the person in front of you.
Thank you, everybody. I want to add that I forgot a couple of people who are associated with getting the service ready. There are so many of us who help out. Reverend Barbara with the aesthetics this morning, as she often does, and also who was on setup this morning? It was beautifully set up. Raise your hand if you were on setup. Well, good for the choir. Thank you. Great. So this morning I was thinking, well, it's summertime and we don't specifically have a children's program this morning. So maybe I'll do something that's mainly focused for the adults about all ages. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a meditation, and then we'll have a brief period of conversation after the meditation. So I invite you now to just close your eyes or look down so you're within your own space, can be more aware of your own thoughts and processes. And begin by taking a few nice, long, deep breaths to relax your body. In this quiet time, each of us can be open to whatever is the highest and the best that we know. Some name that as God. Some think of it as being their highest values or their own deep wisdom. Whatever it is that's highest and best for you, tune into that. Think back now to your early school days as a child. And remember sometimes when you learned how to think for yourself. Remember anyone who helped you do that and how they helped you learn to think for yourself. Parents and other family, teachers, church school, especially if you grew up Unitarian Universalist. And think back, were there times when you taught yourself to think for yourself? That happens. And now do the same thing looking back at high school and college days. Sometimes when you learned more about how to think for yourself and to try to figure out for yourself what is true, what is false. And finally, remember sometimes when you were told not to think for yourself. Just believe what I'm telling you and don't ask questions. If that happened to you, what did you feel? And what did you do? And now, as we did a few weeks ago, think about, just imagine as best you can, the children in our 1,000 UU congregations who are learning that life is about something greater than their own narrow self-interests. A lot of adults haven't learned that lesson. Our children are learning it. Now notice whatever you're experiencing at this moment. And take a few deep breaths. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Okay. Does anyone have any sharings about what they experienced? Any aspect of this at all? Yes.
So I thought about when I was babysitting and I found a copy of the book, The Lifetime of Harvey Milk on their, sorry, back when I was a kid and I was babysitting, the folks I was babysitting for had a copy of the book, The Life and Times of Harvey Milk, on their shelf. And I read it and was absolutely fascinated and appalled at the parts of our history I hadn't known about. And I like to think that was something that started me on a journey of being an ally.
Who else? Peggy.
And people would tell me, thank you, Steve. People would tell me how to think about something and what was the truth and what wasn't. And my response to it, I came from a very firm and dogmatic family, and sometimes people insisted that you agree with them, and would just really push until you did. So my strategy, I don't know if it's functional or not, was just to be quiet and formulate my thoughts more completely, and speak them for when it was the right place to do it. But I learned how not to argue with people that were pushing their point of view on me.
At how old? How old were you when you got...
The first time I did it, I was 6.
Sorry?
And I remember the moment. I was 6, S-I-X.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I remember the moment.
Great sharing. Okay. We have time for one or two more. Anybody else? Okay, Don. Yeah, Don.
Thanks, Steve. I think mostly people had expectations of what I would do and be and think. There were a few, like there's one grandmother who encouraged me she really liked that I made little things. So she introduced me to like modeling clay and things like that. And there were some teachers like that. But mostly it seems like it was all cut out. No decisions really to make.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for those things, and glad to talk about this with anybody else after the service.
We take up a collection on Sundays for the simple reason that our purpose in gathering is for more than ourselves. We want to make sure that the ministries that we need, the ones that infuse worth and dignity into our children, our youth, our programs of learning and leadership, and our ministries of anti-oppression, and our work in the larger world, are in place to meet the needs of others. We hope you will make a contribution towards these worthy causes by mailing your check to Mission Peak, UU Congregation, at the address on the screen. You can also use the bill pay option in your online banking, or drop your check into the Mission Peak mail slot, or you can pay online with a credit or debit card. Thank you for supporting and sustaining the efforts of our members, friends, and staff. Your contributions make loving, learning, and leadership more possible.
So one of the things that allows us to find hope and meaning, especially in hard times, is the love and support we show one another. So if you have a joy or a concern to share with this caring community, please write it briefly in the chat, or if you're on Zoom, and start your chat with whether it's a joy or a concern. If you're here in person, you can use the book that's over on the table there. Please write clearly, and you can place a stone for a joy or a concern while the music plays. If your need is personal, you can also send an email to Reverend Barbara here. She'll follow up or pass on the information to Reverend Greg, who's on vacation. And finally, one last stone for those concerns that are still too tender to escape our hearts. So, how many of you are familiar with Douglas Adams, who was a science fiction novelist? I figured with UUs it would be a bunch of you. Yes, absolutely. So, this is a reading from The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. It's not precisely on the topic of the day, but it's about ignorance in a broader sense. The universe is an unsettlingly big place. A fact for the sake of a quiet life most people tend to ignore. Many would happily move to somewhere rather smaller of their own devising. And this, in fact, is what most beings do. For instance, in one corner of the eastern galactic arm lies the large forest planet Oglaroon, the entire intelligent population of which lives permanently in one fairly small and crowded nut tree, in which tree they are born, live, fall in love, carve tiny speculative articles in the bark about the meaning of life, the futility of death, and the importance of birth control, fight a few extremely minor wars, and eventually die strapped to the underside of some of the less accessible outer branches. These creatures are certain that their little tree contains absolutely everything of importance. In fact, the only Oglaroonians who ever leave their tree are those who are hurled out of it for the heinous crime of wondering whether any of the other trees might be capable of supporting life. Or indeed whether any of the other trees are anything else besides the illusions brought on by eating too many oglanuts. Although it may seem bizarre that Oglaroonians think their little tree contains everything significant, there is no life form in the galaxy that is not in some way guilty of the same thing.
This song's from Porgy and Bess. It was in the show. You have a community of believers with one guy who kind of fakes it, called Sportin' Life. This is Sportin' Life's song. It ain't necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. These things that you're liable to read in the Bible, they ain't necessarily so. Little David was small, but oh my. Little David was small, but oh my. He fought big Goliath, who lay down and dieth. Little David was small, but oh my. Why do Tim Bam Babaloo, who did it water, scaredy why? Oh yeah. Now little Moses, he was found in a stream. Little Moses was found in a stream. He floated on water till old Pharaoh's daughter, she fished him, she said, from that stream. Now Jonah, he lived in a whale. Oh, Jonah, he lived in a whale. Yep, he made his home in that fish's abdomen. Old Jonah, he lived in a whale. What do? Zim zim baloo. Who do you do water? Scaredy wah. Oh yeah. It ain't necessarily so. No, it ain't necessarily so. The things that you're liable to read in the Bible, they ain't necessarily so. To get into heaven, don't snap for a 7. Live clean, don't have no fault. Oh, now I preach that gospel whenever it's possible, but with a grain of salt. Methuselah lived 900 years. Methuselah lived 900 years. But who calls that living? Ain't no gal gone giving to no man what's 900 years. I'm preaching this gospel to show that it ain't necessarily so. Tell him, sister. Thank you. Chosen by today's great and glorious leader, Chris.
You guys were in good form this morning. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, I'm going to start off with a little poem by Kurt Vonnegut. He used the male-focused language of his era, but I'm sure we can hear it as referring to everyone. Tiger got to hunt. Bird got to fly. Man got to sit and wonder, why? Tiger got to sleep. Bird got to land. Man got to tell himself, he understand. Since college days, I've been what you might call a broad-spectrum agnostic, skeptical of whether we have solid knowledge about a whole lot of different things. I just think that we are often grossly overconfident about our own knowledge. People who can't balance their checkbooks think that if they would think they know how to fix the economy. People who argue a lot with their spouses think if they were president, they'd bring peace to the Middle East. Intelligent and good-hearted and well-informed people disagree about religion, morality, politics, economics, criminology, psychology, child-rearing, education, medicine, nutrition, yada, yada, yada. And it seems to me that whenever large numbers of people who are sincere and competent persistently disagree, we may not know who is correct, if anyone. That's a hint that we might just be ignorant about the issue. What I want to emphasize today is that lots of times we keep ourselves ignorant because we aren't reality testing. We quickly come to a conclusion without stopping to think twice or to do a tiny bit of fact-checking. Jonah lived in a whale's belly? Whoa, cool. Pharaoh's daughter said she just found that baby floating down the stream? Well, of course she did. So here's an example of poor reality testing. One day, a fellow named Professor Mendoza appeared on Spanish television, claiming that he could bend kitchen utensils, such as spoons, at a distance of many kilometers. Thousands of people called the station, testifying that their cutlery had begun to bend. After a little while, Professor Mendoza revealed that he was actually the president of Spain's Magician Society, and he was demonstrating the power of suggestion. No doubt, lots of people have some bent forks and spoons lying around. After Mendoza predicted that bending would occur, they paid attention to distortions in silverware they hadn't been noticing and focused on before. Since psychic spoon bending would be rather amazing, it would seem to call for really, really careful reality testing. You know, am I actually seeing a spoon bend now? Is somebody else seeing the same thing? Yeah. So humans are especially weak in reality checking issues in religion and politics. These are enormously complicated topics, but sometimes the less people know about some issue, the more emotionally attached they are to their own opinions. One problem in religion is that a lot of theology is based on religious experiences, visions, dreams, mystical revelations. But religious experience is often ambiguous, as open to interpretation as a Rorschach inkblot. Imagine that at some particular time, 8 people at different places in the world are dealing with a personal crisis, and that each one of these 8 people suddenly feels a profound and unexpected serenity. One of the 8 interprets this as, this is the presence of God. Another says this is the presence of a spirit guide. Others say the serenity came from their own unconscious mind, or their higher self, or the voice of reason, or a psychological insight, or a new brand of vitamins, or it was just a change of mood that needs no explanation. Religious experiences can be incredibly important, no doubt about that, but they are open to interpretation. In biblical times, people spoke about religious experiences as if they were receiving clear and specific messages from heaven. Thus saith the Lord. But in modern times, people who think God talks to them in well-defined sentences often quote God as saying things that are crude and implausible. The televangelist Oral Roberts, for example, said at one point that God told him he had to raise $8 million, that's a rather specific revelation, $8 million for Roberts' university, or else he would be called home. So the big guy in the sky was holding Roberts for ransom. God was going to rub him out if he didn't raise enough dough. In Gary Trudeau's Doonesbury comic strip, one of the characters wondered how much God could collect by targeting someone really important, like Vanna White, for the Wheel of Fortune show. One extreme example of believing things without thinking twice about them is biblical literalism, the doctrine that everything in the Bible is true as if it was written by God. I have a blog that I haven't mentioned much at all here called Did God Really Say That? I put information about that at the end of the printed order of service and in the chat, along with some other resources. My blog has many examples of things the Bible says God did or told people to do that are just abhorrent, but somehow people don't notice. Children get told about Noah's Ark as if it's a fun story. The animals prancing 2 by 2 by 2 onto the ark. But you know, this is a story about God destroying almost all life because humans were sinful. Somehow, people think that sort of God should be worshipped. But the main thing I want to talk about today, sorry about that, but it's politics. Yeah. Can I get a yeah? I'm mainly going to speak to those of us who are politically liberal or progressive or religiously liberal, but I hope some of this will speak to everyone. This is a very tough time for religious liberals, but it's also an opportunity to confront our own ignorance and deepen our understanding. We may have thought we understood our fellow citizens, but the success of the MAGA movement has ripped away that veil of complacency. I need to admit, I do not understand the political attitudes of tens of millions of my fellow Americans, including some wonderful people that I know well. I'm trying to understand why people would vote for someone who is so often cruel. His mean-spirited, sometimes just vicious attacks on his fellow Republicans was the first thing I noted about him in the Republican presidential candidate debates in 2015. And why do people vote for someone who's bragged about being a serial sex offender? Someone who's the great polarizer, so skillful in turning Americans against each other. And of course, there was his behavior on January 6th, 2021, followed this year by pardons for everyone who invaded the Capitol building that day. And after all that, there are now more Republicans than Democrats, according to some measures, for the first time in decades. Clearly, I am missing something. I'm also perplexed that many accept the things he's done in his second term. And I want to talk about 4 examples that make me go, what in the world, and make me want to probe beneath the surface. First, unleashing Elon Musk to feed almost our entire foreign aid program into the wood chipper. According to Boston University researchers, cuts to foreign aid from America have already caused the deaths of at least 103,000 adults and 215,000 children. The founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates, who has spent billions of his own dollars on health programs in Africa, put it starkly. The picture of the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one. And how about hearing some outrage from churches that have supported Trump? What would Jesus say about cutting off life-saving aid with no warning? Bam! It's out. It's done. This program of helping you is closed. This clinical trial and that clinical trial and that one and that one and that one, those are done. No more. Matthew 25:40. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. The second problem I'll mention hits close to home. This administration has recently drastically cut cancer research. Here we just lost a dear member to cancer. My best friend has incurable cancer. I personally have prostate cancer that so far has not needed treatment. I want them to find better treatments. Let's write to AARP and ask them to mobilize a powerful response to this attack on our health. Third, authoritarianism, and that's where we get into the constitutional calamity, the title of the sermon. This administration is systematically taking control of media, higher education, law firms, judicial system, more happening almost every day. Just last week, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting announced it is closing. Just last week, Jonathan Capehart resigned from the editorial staff of the Washington Post. The Post editorial writers now are asked to, in a sense, begin alignment with Trump's agenda by saying that they should only focus on what's positive in America. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, who owns the Post, has written that we are going to be writing every day in support of 2 pillars, personal liberties and free markets. Yeah, personal liberty as masked thugs in unmarked cars, snatch people off the streets. Yeah, free markets, except for some teensy little tariffs. Finally, one more item, the attack on any objective source of truth. On Friday, the monthly employment report came out, looking worse than expected, so Trump fired the woman who prepared the report, claiming without evidence that the bad report was politically motivated. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard that Trump or one of his associates claimed without evidence, I'd have enough to build us a church. Interestingly, 2 years ago, the Chinese government, knowing there had been another increase in youth unemployment, which had risen then 7 months in a row, decided to stop releasing that report. Authoritarians figure keeping us ignorant is going to keep us happy. Okay, time to take a few deep breaths before we go on. I mean, this is such awful material, but I wanted to just lay some of it on the table, and there's lots more. So, I will say I am pleased that I made one good choice about Donald Trump when I first saw him in those Republican presidential candidate debates. I made a commitment that I would not try to figure this guy out. He sincerely, earnestly proclaimed so many obvious falsehoods and cheerfully contradicted himself so many times that I figured there's no way to know what he really thinks. And hundreds of times since then, I've heard commentators inform us of why he did something bizarre. Pundits are still pounding on how stupid he is, or how childish, or how easy he is to manipulate, or how unhappy he is deep inside, making him sound rather pitiful while he takes over the world. And how are the pundits doing at explaining why Kamala Harris lost? This was a topic of a recent blog post by Doug Mooter. Does anybody here follow Doug Mooter, his post? Excellent. Joanne, yes. Anybody else? It's called The Weekly Sift, and there's information in the resources at the end of your order of service and in the chat. Recently, he commented on an article by Nathan Heller in The New Yorker. Doug wrote, Heller begins with an observation I keep banging my head against. All those accounts where Harris lost because she didn't do something, almost invariably, she did the things that they're claiming she didn't do. She talked about kitchen table issues. She had detailed policy proposals. She gave interviews. She reached out to every kind of voter. She raised money. She advertised. She had a great ground game. But for some reason, the things she said and did didn't register with some large chunk of the electorate. A few weeks ago, the Reverend Samantha Wilson spoke in this pulpit about the crack where the light gets in. Do some of you remember that talk? It's a wonderful metaphor, the crack where the light gets in. I'm looking for cracks that let in light about how people see Trump. I'll give you a couple of examples where I think some light is being let in. In the New York Times, Stephen Ratner reported conversations with centrist businessmen and women about why they supported Trump. Quote, while very few businessmen have been publicly praising the president and his actions, in private many of them voice support for him. I thought the chaos of the last month, such as the unqualified cabinet appointments, might cause regret. I've certainly seen concerns, but many, perhaps even most of the people I'm talking to in private, are still quietly cheering his move fast and break things approach. One of them even said he likes Elon Musk's government shakeup so much that he now regrets voting for Ms. Harris. I mean, Ratner found a lot of resentment for Joe Biden's regulations and, quote, they didn't like diversity, equity, and inclusion policies either, or anything they derisively described to me as woke stuff. Now, folks, notice these are things that UUs have been emphasizing. This is really central to things we've been doing it for years now. Okay? How can we communicate that America would be better off if people woke up? Perhaps we should learn more about why DEI and similar programs turn people off. Perhaps it's only because of racism, but maybe there's more to it, and I'd like to know. Here's another example of a crack in our expectations and assumptions. New York Times reports that in the 2024 election, quote, the once reliably Democratic bastions along the Rio Grande in Texas were all red, an astonishing shift from 8 years ago when Mrs. Clinton won 70 to 80% of the vote. Wow. In the Rio Grande area, quote, many local residents have cultural ties to Latin America, perplexing political experts who assumed that Mr. Trump's campaign promise of mass deportations would sour Latino voters. Mia Vela, 18 years old, explained, he talks like everyday people. Maybe it's time to stop making fun of the way he communicates. And maybe there's more we can learn from these South Texas Trump voters and from voters in our own Central Valley. Okay, this sermon is called A Gospel of Ignorance, and the word gospel means good news. I admit that in this sermon I've mainly focused on the bad news, bad consequences of not knowing the truth. But I do believe that facing our ignorance can be enlivening, empowering, and even inspiring. So I'll briefly mention two ideas about the value of admitting ignorance. First of all, where there is ignorance, there is potential. It may seem as if our personal problems have no solutions, or the evils of society cannot be corrected. But because our knowledge is so limited, we no doubt overlook all sorts of alternatives. Life is abundant with hidden possibilities. I really believe that. That's a part of my faith. Life is abundant with hidden possibilities. I'm an agnostic about human progress. I don't think we can know whether the world is getting better or getting worse. No human mind is powerful enough to add up all the positive and negative trends on this planet, including a lot of them that don't get reported in the news, and determining whether our world as a whole is improving or deteriorating. On the personal level and on the planetary level, we seldom know enough to justify despair, even these days. Second, admitting ignorance keeps us growing. We are the creatures that can always learn more. To paraphrase Vonnegut's poem, tiger knows how to hunt, bird knows how to fly. We know there's always one more. Why? I'm so proud that UUs are known for that bumper sticker that says, to question is the answer, and known for teaching children to think for themselves. We are learning to rest in our restless curiosity. Tiger got to sleep. Bird got to land. We can accept there's always more that we can understand. So now I invite you to rise as you're able to sing hymn number 1. Thank you. Hymn number 1064, 1064, Blue Boat Home.
I'm gonna venture a guess that maybe my blue boat home would be continuing to reach and search for the truth. Not around. Not around. Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my glad heart can say, I've been singing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known, the wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep. Lifting you in our arms of heavens, now we hear the pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens, in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the ways of holy, if the great winds urging me on, read the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known, the wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, I invite you to close the service with one hand on your heart and another reaching out to the world. I'd suggest reaching out in a level way and not with the hand like this, because you don't want people to think that it's another sort of gesture. The benediction. John W. Brigham. Go your ways, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know. Go in peace, return in love.